What's going on, my beautiful people? Coach Will here. I hope all is well. And in this video, we're going to be going over the absolute best tips so that way you can start burning fat today. With that being said, if you're new here, be sure to leave a like down below, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and do the whole thing. And even if you are new here, be sure to show some love down below. It really helps the channel grow so I can continue making content like this each and every single day. Also, for those of you interested in online fitness coaching with yours truly, check the online fitness coaching application down below so we could get started working together, so we can make a plan of attack to help you reach your fitness goals starting today. With all that out of the way, my beautiful people, we're gonna get straight into it. So when it comes to losing fat, there are only two main criteria that you really need to focus in on so that way you could get the results that you're looking for. The first thing is you need to be in some form of caloric deficit in order to see any noticeable change on the scale as well as your overall body composition. The second thing you need to do is to actually put on lean muscle tissue to help boost your metabolism as well as to help sculpt the body accordingly so that way it's not just looking all flat and flabby once you lose that weight. That's it. Whoever wants to tell you that, oh, you need to take this supplement because it's gonna help you with that, or you need to take this fat burner because it's gonna help you do this, they're spewing a whole lot of bull crap. Or somebody says, oh, you need to go on keto, you need to do intermittent fasting. Whatever somebody preaches you that's any of these weird fad diets or fat burners or whatever, what have you, like just some gimmick, it's a whole lot of bull crap. You don't need that in your life. What you need to focus on is the two things I just mentioned, building lean muscle and being in a caloric deficit. That's it. You don't need anything else. Now, the thing is, when it comes to building lean muscle as well as being in a caloric deficit, these are two things that don't necessarily correlate hand in hand most of the time. The reason being is when we put ourselves in a caloric deficit, we're placing our body in a catabolic state in which it's actually promoting muscle loss versus muscle gain. Now, if you're somebody who's new to fitness and you're somebody who's generally very overweight, being in a caloric deficit and actually putting on lean muscle, this is a fairly easy act to do. So if you're an absolute fitness beginner, or if you're somebody who's really overweight, this isn't something that's too hard to do. However, if you're somebody who's more in the intermediate to advanced phases of your fitness journey, then this could get a little bit complicated. But for the majority of the people watching this video, you most likely do not fall under that category. Somebody who's intermediate to advanced with their fitness journey most likely knows this information. So I'm gonna focus on my beginners out there and my overweight people who really need this. So when it comes to being in a caloric deficit, what does this mean? Well, we're essentially talking about the law of thermodynamics, right? Basically, all being in a caloric deficit means is energy in versus energy out. We're trying to burn more energy than that of which we are consuming through the food that we eat. The food that we consume on a daily basis is our source of fuel. Without our source of fuel, we will not be able to function. Now, when maintaining that caloric balance where we're more in a deficit versus in a surplus, we have to keep in mind a couple of key details. The first, we have to establish what is our baseline calories that we need to sustain the same weight that we're at right now. Once we're able to establish that baseline of calories that we need to stay at that baseline of weight that we're at, we can then go about things accordingly in order to start losing weight. Now, how do we actually establish our baseline of calories? Well, there are a couple things we can do. The first of which is we plug and play into an equation and we'll get a specific number, or we just simply go on Google and we use a calorie calculator, and it helps us get a rough estimate of where we need to be at as far as our calories go. Once we reach this point, it's a matter of plugging and playing and trial and error. Whatever the number that you put in the calculator gives you, it's more or less what you should be consuming on a day-to-day basis. So sometimes you could get away with consuming a little bit more and seeing results. Sometimes you may need to consume a little bit less in order to see any results at all. The way we actually go about doing so is we need to monitor our weight and we need to monitor how our body is looking in the mirror on a day-to-day basis as we go about our journey of weight loss and fat loss. So in regards to how many calories we should be consuming in a given day in order to be in a sustainable caloric deficit, Once you find out what your specific number is, you want to start off with being in at least a 200 calorie deficit. The reason why we start off so little is to give ourselves more room to grow. So let's say, for instance, your maintenance is 2,500 calories to stay whatever weight you're at right now. Let's say now for week 1, you start off consuming 2,300 calories daily. So from consuming 2,300 calories daily, you can measure your progress accordingly with the weight scale as well as with the mirror. You can see what is the trend of the scale. Is the scale on a trend downward? Is it on a trend upward? Or is it pretty much borderline the same? The way you do this is you want to take the overall average weigh-in of the entire week based on last week's entire weigh-in. Do some math and find out if you're in a net positive or in a net negative. If for whatever reason you're over, maybe you need to consume less calories. If you're under, that means that's good. Keep doing what you're doing. The only time you make the adjustment in order to dip down even further is when you notice that your progress starts to stagnate, or if you notice that, let's say when you're starting off, you're just pretty much at the same place the entire time. So based on those scenarios, those are the adjustments you need to make as far as your calories go. Now, it is important to understand that in the process of actually losing weight, or in the process of losing fat, you need to make sure that you do it in a slow and steady manner. So how slow and how steady are we talking, Will? Well, ideally speaking, in order to sustain a prolonged and efficient fat loss and weight loss journey, you should be looking to lose anywhere around 0.5 to 1 pound of body weight every week throughout the duration of your weight loss journey / fat loss journey. Anything faster than that, you're running the risk of, on top of losing the fat that you're trying to burn, also losing a lot of muscle. See, sometimes faster isn't always better. However, this can also coincide depending on how overweight you are as well. You got to keep that in mind. So for example, if you're somebody who's 100 pounds overweight versus somebody who's maybe 15 to 20 pounds overweight, the person who's 100 pounds overweight may lose a bunch of weight super duper fast versus somebody who's, say, 15 to 20 pounds overweight. So there's also that important correlation that you have to keep in mind. The more or the heavier you are and the more body fat you have, the faster you technically can lose that body fat. Vice versa, the lower on the spectrum you are, the slower, more steadily you want the process to be. So either which way, whether you're 100 pounds overweight or 15 to 20 pounds overweight, about 0.5 to 1 pound of weight weekly is usually a good spot to be at, no matter which end of the spectrum you fall under. Secondly, how do we go about actually tracking such calories? Like, how the hell do I know how much I'm eating, what I'm eating, this and that? Well, for starters, everything you eat has a caloric property as well as macronutrients to go with it, along with micronutrients to go with it that contains your vitamins and minerals and all that things that are very important for health and vitality. When it comes to tracking these things, you could either do it the hard way and the old school way and track everything by hand meticulously, or you could use modern day technology, download a fitness app tracker. Something like MyFitnessPal will definitely help you out as far as tracking your calories, or whatever app you prefer. The reason why I say MyFitnessPal is it's just the most popular, most well-known, and it definitely helps you get an understanding and a gist of how to track calories. And it's also user-friendly, super easy to use, not complicated at all. You take whatever food item you have. Every food item you have has a barcode. So for example, let's say I'm gonna take my pre-workout here, right? So my pre-workout right here has a barcode. You take it, you scan it, and once you scan it, it'll give you a nutritional value of whatever you consumed, and then boom, bam, bam, you plug and play, it tracks everything for you, and then you can start seeing the numbers throughout your day. So once you have an understanding of how you're actually eating based on the calories and your required calories for the day, this is where you could kind of start making the adjustments based on if you see you're eating way too much, or maybe you could be on the complete end of the spectrum where you may not even have realized it. Maybe you're eating way too little, and then maybe another day you're eating crazy amounts and it's very inconsistent. The minute you cut out the inconsistencies and make things consistent, that's when you start seeing the best results possible. So start tracking, and with tracking will come better results down the road. Another thing to add on with tracking is being mindful of your macros, right? So the thing about macros is they technically don't matter. What ultimately matters is calories in, calories out, right? Because it's just the law of thermodynamics. It doesn't matter which way you lay out your macros as long as your calories are in play. However, there is a better way to go about laying out your macros. So one, when you're dieting down or eating in a deficit, you're more efficient with how you eat. With being more efficient with how you eat, you run less risk of feeling hungry. You also run less risk of potentially just binge eating out of nowhere and going off your diet. And it becomes more sustainable long term as you continue to diet down the road. So that way, once you do hit your goal, you could pretty much go on maintenance and just kind of eat how you've been eating with no problems at all. So the first thing I would suggest for you to do is make sure that you're consuming at least anywhere between 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. The reason for this is protein is muscle sparing. So the more protein we are able to consume within our caloric range, keep that in mind, the better off we will be in terms of feeling fuller throughout our day, as well as optimizing the muscle recovery, as well as optimizing how much lean muscle mass we're able to sustain while being in a caloric deficit. Because remember, when we're in a caloric deficit, our body is in a catabolic state in which your body ultimately wants to just lose all the weight. It doesn't want to hold on to anything because you're telling your body something else otherwise. So keeping that protein intake at that level is definitely optimal when it comes to balancing out your macros. So along with this, ultimately you could do whatever you want as far as your carbohydrates and your fats are concerned. Some people like high fats, some people like high carbs, some people like a balance between both. I say go with a higher carbohydrate approach to a low to moderate fat approach. The reason for this is when you look at the breakdown, how many calories per gram are each of the two macros. When you look at carbs and protein, for instance, 1 gram of carb or 1 gram of protein is equivalent to that of 4 calories. Vice versa, if you look at fat, 1 gram of fat is equivalent to that of 9 calories. So based off of the math alone, you could see that the more fat you consume, the closer you're gonna end up being to basically being over your calorie maintenance, thus pretty much not enabling you to make progress at all. On top of that, you gotta keep in mind that if we're able to consume more with getting less, you're basically saving money in the bank, right? I would much rather have you consume a bunch of healthy leafy greens that are low calorie dense but give you that vitality in terms of making you feel fuller versus going out of your way and eating or drinking like a bunch of milk or something like that, which is high in fat. You know what I'm saying? So being smarter with our food choices when it comes to that regard is ultimately what's gonna help you sustain your long-term caloric deficit, and then once you hit that goal of yours, allow you to maintain that long-term throughout the road. Now with the whole macros and calories out the way, as far as micros go, as long as you're eating your fruits and vegetables, you're good, right? Just make sure that within your calories, you're getting plenty of fruits and vegetables and fibrous foods. So this way you're able to sustain your vitality. Don't be that person who is like, oh yeah, as long as it fits my macros, I can eat whatever the hell I want. Remember, you are what you eat. If you eat like a slob, you're gonna feel like a slob, which ultimately you feeling like a slob is gonna affect your performance when it comes to what you do in the gym, which we'll get into that later when it comes to building muscle. And ultimately, it's just not gonna be a fun time. So definitely be very diligent as far as how you go about eating. Get plenty of fruits and vegetables in your diet, fibrous foods, get your lean meats and whatnot if you're somebody who does that. If you're somebody who's maybe vegetarian or vegan, find plant food sources that are good in protein as well as everything else. So as far as building muscle goes, ultimately you want to make sure that you're focusing on the main compound movements. What I mean by compound movements are movements that use multiple joints at once that allow you to recruit maximal muscle fibers and get more bang for your buck out of one singular exercise. So this could be exercises that are either loaded or unloaded. So this could be something like a push-up, a dip, a pull-up, a body weight squat, you know, single-legged movements, things like that use no weights at all. These movements will still help you build a great amount of muscle and will help you sustain a nice lean figure. Vice versa, if you want to be able to, or you're somebody who just likes to use weights, you can always do weighted dips, you can always do stuff like bench press, you can always do stuff like weighted squats and deadlifts to help you continue to build and progressively overload on these big compound movements. So as long as you're using these bigger movements in tangent with one another, focusing on improving your performance over time, whether this be adding more weight, adding more reps, adding more sets, and just adding more total work in a given workout, you're definitely going to be in a good place to continue to build muscle as long as your nutrition is well set in tangent with your muscle building protocol. And that is the video, my beautiful people. So just to recap, the only two things you really need as far as losing fat goes is being in some form of caloric deficit. Within being in this caloric deficit, you want to start off at about a 200 caloric deficit and then go from there as far as measuring how your body adjusts week to week as far as your weight loss progress goes, and also as far as what you're looking at in the mirror. Secondly, in tangent with this first key component, you want to make sure that you're consuming wholesome food, so making sure you're eating your fruits and vegetables, and also making sure you're just not eating like a slob, making sure you're getting in enough protein, anywhere between 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight, so that way you're able to sustain energy, vitality, and lean muscle mass while you're on this caloric deficit. And now with the second key detail, you want to make sure that you're focusing on building lean muscle mass. The way we build lean muscle mass is we focus on our key compound movements, multi-jointed movements that utilize multiple muscle groups in one go, things such as our squats, our push-ups, our pull-ups, our dips, things of that nature, as well as you can even do loaded movements such as weighted squats, as well as deadlifts, as well as even weighted calisthenics movements like weighted dips to help you address and help you continuously progress as far as your strength goes. Because ultimately, the stronger you're able to get and the more you're able to improve your performance, whether it be with weight, adding reps, or adding total amount of work and volume, more sets, this is what's going to be the key driver to allow you to see the progress that you're looking to see. My beautiful people, Will from the future. So there's actually one more key detail that I really want to point out for y'all, and that key detail is when it comes to helping the fat loss process, you also want to make sure that you're implementing some form of cardio as well as increasing your NEAT. What your NEAT is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So basically every bit of activity that you're doing that isn't exercise related. So this could be something as simple as walking more, taking the stairs instead of going up an elevator, playing sports, and things of that nature. So basically the more you move, the more calories you'll be able to burn, thus being able to burn more fat throughout the duration of your fat loss process. On top of that, if you're able to implement some form of cardiovascular activity in tangent with your strength training and your dieting, and you're being more active when you're not in the gym or wherever it is that you decide to work out, you're gonna be able to be more efficient with the fat loss process. As far as what kind of cardio you decide to do is honestly up to you. You can go out for a run, you could do jump rope, you could, take up a sport, do some boxing, something that's physically demanding, get your heart rate up for an extended period of time, so that way you can optimize your fat loss journey. And with all that being said, my beautiful people, that is it. If you liked the video, leave a like down below to let me know. Also, comment down below on what you'd like to see me go over next. Subscribe, turn on post notifications, and do the whole thing. And once again, if you are interested in being coached by yours truly, check the online fitness coaching application down below so we could start working together today to help you create a plan of attack to hit your fitness goals. And with that out of the way, my beautiful people, in Will we trust? Until next time.